Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope you're having a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day weekend. And now for all you mothers out there, I wish you a lovely Mother's Day. Today I get to share with you part 1 of the 10 cards 1 kit tutorial with the C&CT stamp May 2019 card kit. I'm just showing you briefly what comes in the kit. You get some alcohol pearl inks along with Yubo paper, some alcohol ink glitter sparkle paper. You get your stamp set here, which is gorgeous, and it's called Delicate Flowers. Just beautiful. You get 12 sheets of pattern papers. One of them here is double-sided, but the rest are single-sided, and they're beautiful. Motoscrap always has gorgeous papers, and they're just stunning. Very watercolor effect looking. You get 3 sheets of cardstock, pink, white, and green, leaf green, cotton candy, and 120 pound white, along with some coordinating envelopes. You also get your alcohol pearl inks. These are some beautiful colors. You get Tranquil. It's a beautiful blue, and you can see that the pearls kind of settle to the bottom. You want to make sure you shake them before you use them. But you also get a, let me show you the colors. Sublime is the green, and Intrigue is the blue. You also get washi tape. The washi tape that I have is from Cartabella. It's called Flower Market. Some of you probably got the flower bouquet, and I think they may have ran out when I ordered my kit. So I'm not going to be using the washi tape today. But we're going to jump in and create some background panels with our alcohol pearl inks. Now, just a warning, I sped the video up really quick, and when it comes to alcohol inks or alcohol pearl inks, I have trouble. I have trouble with them. I guess I don't know when to stop with my panels, so I'm just kind of going with the flow. This one here I used a pink and the blue. This next panel I'm going to use the green with the blue. This one gave me a little bit of problems because I kept tilting the paper and I kept getting streak lines, so I ended up just going with it. I do struggle with any kind of alcohol inks or alcohol pearl inks, so bear with me, and I just used a few panels for my cards today. But I thought the cards that I made with my alcohol pearl ink panels would look just as pretty with any kind of effect, just with the colors that I used. I mean, I was having problems. I even tried smushing this one and in the end it turned out probably one of my favorite panels. Next we're going to do one more, and I thought we'd do it at all 3 colors at a diagonal. And it turned out really pretty, but I ended up not using this panel here. I did set these aside to make sure that they dried completely. Next we're going to use the Silver Sparkle cardstock. Now this killed me when I went over it with my alcohol pearls because it covered up that beautiful pearl background. I kept trying to get that pearl background to show through. I even brought in a paintbrush, and I ended up swishing it left to right, and just left it as it is. Sometimes the more you work with it, the more messy it gets. So I'm going to call that one done. So those are my panels. I'm going to set those aside, and we are going to jump into our first card. For our first card today, it's pretty basic and simple. I have a piece of Canson XL watercolor cardstock, and we're going to do some stamping. I'm going to take one of the floral images here. I'm going to go over my watercolor cardstock with my anti-static powder bag and stamp it with my watermark ink. I'm going to go over my image with some gold embossing powder. Now for our first card today, I'm going to show the coloring, but the rest of the coloring that I did for all 10 cards, guys, is the same exact, so I skipped the coloring on the rest. I used my gold embossing powder for all of my images, and then I also used Distress inks, my little mini ink cubes, to color in my images. I'm going to stamp the little leaf flourish here on a panel. Now the panel size here is 3 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches, and I used the watercolor cardstock again. While I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my Miss You sentiment up in that top right corner. We're going to add our gold embossing powder, and then we'll go ahead and melt this. Now, all of my images today, guys, in part 1 and part 2, again, are using my Distress inks as watercoloring. I didn't list the colors, but I'll try to remember it and tell them what I used. For my first card was super easy. There was a pattern paper that was a beautiful pink, and I wanted the same color, so I found that the picked raspberry Distress ink worked really well, coordinating with that pattern paper. Now I have some black little flakes on my paintbrush. I must not have cleaned it off the last time I used it, so I'm kind of struggling getting those little black shavings or whatever on my brush. I'm trying to get them off of my panel here. But basically I'm just dipping my brush in water, picking up some of that picked raspberry, and just going over my images. I only have one image here. But it was super basic. I'm gonna pick up a little bit. If I wanted a little bit more color gradient, I added less water to my Distress ink. After I get this watercoloring done, I do end up fussy cutting this one out. We'll just set it aside to dry, and then I'm going to take my leaf panel. This is going to be my background panel, so that's why I stamped directly on that. I'm going to use some Twisted Citron to color in my leaves, and basically I'm going to do the same thing. Just add a little water to my brush, dip it in my Twisted Citron, and color in those leaves. For this one I wanted a little bit more of color gradient, and so I do end up bringing in a little touch of Mowed Lawn. My goal was, when I painted these, to kind of coordinate with the pattern paper as much as I could. Now when I add my Mowed Lawn, I'm going to just touch the bottom of my leaves and basically let the water do its magic. It kind of blends itself, and I really like that. So that's my little leaf panel. Okay, now here's my pattern papers. I'm going to use this one. Using my paper trimmer, we're just going to trim it down. I trimmed it down a little bit too long, so I ended up bringing it back to my paper trimmer and trimming it just a hair more. And then I did cut out a panel that's 4 inches by 5 1/4 with that pink pattern paper. We'll go ahead and adhere this panel to our watercolor cardstock here. And then to cover up the seam, I'm going to bring in some white and gold twine. I'm just going to go ahead and attach this panel to my card base. My card bases today too, guys, I didn't use the cardstock that came in the kit, only because I had a mishap with that while it was sitting on my desk. I actually spilled my coffee all over it. So all my card bases today are A2 in size. They're standard A2 size card bases that I made with white cardstock for my stash. Okay, I popped up my panel, added it to my card base. Now I'm going to add my flower. And then for finishing touches, I'm going to go in with some rose water, Nuvo Jewel Drops. I did dot the center of my large flower there too. But pretty simple card, but that finishes off card number 1. Now moving along to card number 2. Here's my little Yupo paper. It's all nice and dried. I did color in again my flowers with my oxide, or my Distress inks, not oxide. I went with straight little Distress ink cubes. For these ones, I believe I used Blueprint Sketch and Peacock Feathers, just to try to coordinate with my Yupo paper. I'm going to trim off the top, and then we'll go ahead and adhere this directly to our card base. We're going to make a landscape style card. And I do want to tell you that when you adhere your tape runner to the Yupo paper, it's a little bit tricky because it doesn't want to stick as much as regular cardstock. Maybe double-sided tape would have probably worked a little bit better. Okay, I just trimmed that down. Next, I'm going to take my leaves, and we're going to adhere those over the seam between our card base and our Yupo paper here. We'll just trim off those leaves that are hanging over, and then I'm going to add some foam squares behind my flowers here. I did add them to my card base, and then now we're going to stamp our sentiment. Now I'm stamping directly on the Yupo paper, and I do want to caution you that when you do this, you want to be really, really careful, because Yupo paper does have it's a synthetic paper, which means it's plastic, and it does warp so easy. So I'm just going over my sentiment with some white embossing powder. My sentiment will read, "You are beautiful to me," and I'm letting my heat gun heat up just so I don't warp that paper. And I'm going to the paper, pulling back to cool it, just so it doesn't get over hot and warp again that Yupo paper. Okay, now we're going to add some bells and whistles. I did go and pick up these brand new embellishments. These are super cute. They're called Crystal Gems, and they're by Nuvo. Really beautiful. In fact, I think they may be glass, but they're super shiny. I'm just going to add a few here and there, using my glue to attach those to my card base, and then that finishes off card number 2. So pretty basic, and any kind of background you create with the Tranquil and the Sublime ink would work beautifully, I think. Okay, moving along, we're going to work on card number 3. I'm going to use this pattern paper, and I'm going to create a real thick frame with it. So the inside window that I'm cutting out with my rectangle die, it ends up measuring, let's see, 1.5 inches wide by 2 3/4 inches tall. So it's a pretty small window in that panel. I'm going to go ahead and add some foam tape behind it, and we'll attach this to our card base. Now for these flowers, I went ahead and heat embossed with gold embossing powder and colored them in again with my Distress inks. I used the Pick Raspberry, and I love using tea dye, kind of blending them both together to create that smoky pink. I think it's super soft and just gorgeous. But I'm going to go ahead and arrange my little scene. I did add foam squares behind my elements, just the flowers though. Just kind of playing around with my placement a little bit. And then we'll tuck our little rosebuds in that bottom corner. And for the leaves, we're going to add one to the very top. And I end up adding them both up to that top left corner, just so it's nice and balanced. Lovely. Okay, now we need to stamp our sentiment. For this card, I chose Hello Friend, and I wanted to put it on the inside of my little window. But my flower was taking up too much space in that window, so I'm just going to move it down a little bit. That way I can fit my sentiment in that top corner there. I'm going to use Memento Rich Cocoa ink. I thought the brown went really well with the pattern paper. And then all we have to do is add some finishing touches. I'm going to use the same Crystal Gems from Nuvo and add a few here and there, and that finishes off that card. I love that pattern paper. I think it's just gorgeous. Okay. Now for my next card, card number 4, we're going to use some more Yupo paper. This is how it turned out. I did stamp and color in my leaf flourish here. Now I used a variety of colors for this, and I wanted to kind of create colors that coordinated with my Yupo paper. I am going to die cut out a little vase using a vase die from MFT to put that little leaf flourish in. But the colors I used for my leaves were, I believe, Seedless Preserves, Peacock Feathers, and then Blueprint Sketch. I just attached my leaf flourish to my vase, and now we're going to add our Yupo paper. I do want to let you guys know that this one, I don't know if I had too much ink on it or what happened, but I scratched the Yupo paper. You might be able to see it in the pictures, but it scratched really easy for me. So when I added my little vase, I wanted to cover up some of the scratches. We're just going to add some foam squares behind there and place that on our card base. Now I am going to stamp our sentiment for this card. I chose You're Amazing, I'm just going to stamp it on some white cardstock with black ink. And then using my scissors, I'm just going to trim it down. I am going to angle off the right side of my sentiment here. And then I thought we would back this sentiment on some of that leftover Yupo paper. So I'm going to trim a small strip out. Add that to a strip of the Yupo paper. And then we'll just angle off that end. Add a little color behind there. Okay, I'm going to add some tape behind here. And then we are going to add foam tape on the left and right side. And place that over our little vase. And then I'm going to use the same Nuvo crystal gems and try to cover up some of those scratch marks. That one was really bad there. And I do, let's see, when it dried, it did cover up the scratches when it dried. So I got lucky. For my leaves, I'm going to go over my leaves with my Nuvo glitter pen. And then I'm going to go over my leaves with some glossy accents. That way the sparkle is underneath there when it dries. Something a little bit different than florals for my 10 cards. I thought we would throw this one in there. So that finishes off that card, and you can probably see the scratches. Okay, for card number 5, this pattern paper is so stunning. And I also love the glitter alcohol ink paper here from Tim Holtz. Super pretty sparkle on there. And I'm not going to use it with alcohol ink because I'm going to use it as a decorative element. So I just cut out a thin strip, and then I'm going to trim down this pattern paper. I end up trimming it a little bit more, and that killed me because I actually could have used that second portion. I'm going to trim it down to a 3-inch strip. Okay, now the pink pattern paper is left over from card 1. We're going to attach that directly to the left of our card base. And then I went ahead and added my floral pattern paper and covered the seam up with that glitter sparkle paper there. Okay, for my sentiment, I chose a sentiment that says, "You are so special to me," and I'm going to line it up vertically and stamp it in that pink pattern paper area with my same Memento Rich Cocoa ink. Now, I didn't want to add any twine to this card. It's basically a 1-layer card. So I decided to bring the leftover pattern paper from our previous card, and I'm going to cut out a thin strip that's just slightly smaller than that glitter sparkle cardstock. And then just using my tape runner, I'll adhere that down the center. So I have silver peeking out from the left and right. We'll go ahead and adhere that. And then for a little extra sparkle, I'm going to bring in some Nuvo glitter drops. This is silver moon dust, and I went over the center of my flowers, and then also there's little 3-dot clusters on this pattern paper. I went over each one of those. So a pretty simple card just using the pattern paper, but I think it was so beautiful. So here's a look at all 5 cards that I made today. I hope this gives you some ideas on how to use the kit. Stay tuned for part 2. As soon as it's finished uploading, I'll link it at the end of the video for you guys. Part 2 is probably my favorite versus part 1. So be sure to check that out. Thank you so much for stopping by. In fact, I included a little sneak peek here of part 2's cards. But I wish you a lovely day, a happy Mother's Day, and we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.